This video is very kindly sponsored by MPB.
Well, I'm delighted that the sun is shining today, but it does mean I keep standing on jellyfish, which I don't intend to do. They just look like rocks when the sun is this strong. Anyway, welcome everybody to Barmouth, a little coastal town here in Wales that I've been to a number of times before, but mostly, in fact, solely I think, in summer. And when I've been here before, I've decided that I think it's more of a winter spot in terms of direction of light. And today, we're going to find out if I'm right. And also, I want to talk about something I call the three-shot rule. Not really my rule, and actually not really a rule at all. But yeah, I'm going to talk about that today. Ooh, is that going to be a shot? Or is it going to be too bright? But basically, every time I post a page on my website following a video where I include some of the photos I've shown in that video, I'm asked questions about that process, whether I shoot for that process, how I curate the images in that process. So in this video, I thought I could talk about that. And mostly, it has something to do with, the three-shot rule. Train crossing the bridge. It's very pretty here. Is it interesting to photograph? We shall see today. Anyway, three-shot rule. What am I talking about? Basically, and I should start by reiterating that I don't think there are any rules in photography. It's an art, do what you want. But the three-shot rule dictates that if you find yourself in front of a scene that you might like to shoot, then yes, by all means, start with the big wide vista shot that we all often chase. But also ask yourself, could you shoot it as a mid shot? And is there anything there that could mean you could get a detail shot as well? And it's used a lot in filmmaking. And to be honest, I don't think we need to be quite that rigid in our thinking when it comes to photography. I don't think you need to arrive at every single scene thinking, how am I going to shoot this 3 different ways? But I do think it's a good exercise. And I also think that generally speaking, regardless of how long your shoot might last, thinking throughout the course of that shoot, how can I vary the distance between me and my subject means that A, you end up with a bit more of a dynamic photographic eye, in my experience, and B, you end up with a collection of photos which is significantly more interesting to look at than if you just had lots of big wide vistas, for instance. Those detail shots, they kind of act as punctuation and glue, really, for the all the much prettier shots that are much more likely to end up on your wall as prints. There's every chance that that doesn't really make sense at this stage, but hopefully throughout the course of this video, it will do. But yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about today. First coffee, I think, because otherwise I absolutely won't make sense throughout the course of this video. And I'll stand on a lot more jellyfish. I mean, they are literally everywhere. I don't know if I can show you this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's a big one. 11. I could go on. 12 over there. Anyway, where was I? Photography.
So I had quite a good day shooting in Barmouth, with the exception of the seagull deciding to go to the toilet on my head. Not for the first time in my life, not for the first time this month actually, but that's a different story. Anyway, I have compiled about 50 of the photos I took that day onto one of these pages that I was talking about. And I thought what I could do is go through my process of doing that in the hope that it's helpful or interesting. Or both, perhaps. Here goes. So I got lucky with this first photo, really. Basically, what I'm normally aiming for with a first photo of something like this is like a solid 6 out of 10 photo. Something that doesn't give the whole game away, but does give you a flavour of what's to come. Gives you a sense of place, and obviously some nice light. Doesn't hurt either. So that was a good starting point. I then followed that photo up with 2 photos of basically the same scene, but already I'm trying to mix up my distance from my subject. And also, I'm trying to change what the subject is. And I think the conclusion you can draw from these first 3 photos, which are basically the same scene, as you can see from the background, is that this is quite a dynamic place. You've got a person walking along the beach in the first photo, you've got a Range Rover driving along the beach in the second photo, and then a boat with some fishermen on it in the third photo. I think that works quite well to establish what's going on here. Detail photos next, and I think at the top of the video I described detail photos as like punctuation and glue for all the other photos, and I think that is true, but I think a better word for it would be a bridge. And you can basically use detail photos to move like huge geographical distances, theoretically, so long as those detail photos have commonalities with both of the places. For instance, I could have moved 100 miles down the coast using detail photos to move to the next scene, so long as these detail photos could have feasibly come from either of those 2 places. As it happens, I didn't move 100 miles down the coast, I moved about 500 yards, but the detail photos are helpful all the same. And I think what makes a good detail photo is sort of a sense of the abstract or the bizarre. Because the wider, sort of more expansive shots, you can sort of tell what's going on normally. And therefore it gives you a license to, be a bit more abstract with the detail shots. And so for that reason, I think an autumnal leaf stuck on a jellyfish works pretty well. A punched in close-up of the hull of one of these boats works pretty well. And a fairly close-up shot of the wreckage of another of the boats as well. There is also very obviously a colour relationship between all of these photos with the help of the leaves on and around the jellyfish. So yes, those detail shots work as a very nice bridge for me to then move myself to somewhere else. And that somewhere else is over the other side of the pier and onto the beach where we've got some nice silhouette photos. Lovely winter light, as you can see, and the reason I wanted to position them like this is that I kind of think the woman in the photo on the right looks as though she's looking down on the guy in the photo on the left. Obviously she's not, these are entirely different scenes, entirely different photos, but I think visually that works quite well. Her being on the top right, him being on the bottom left. And when you've got 2 people as wide apart as they can possibly be across 2 images like that, it only makes sense to then follow that up with a photo where you've got 2 people quite close together. And with this composition and this focal length, I really like the ambiguity of not really knowing what this woman is doing. Is she waving at me? Is she pointing over the top of me? I mean, it's the latter, but unless you punch in, you can't really tell that. And as I say, I like that ambiguity. Next up, 2 very similar photos. On the left, I like the cloud. On the right, I like the dog. I will say that with shots like this, it's imperative to make sure that your white balance is matching across the 2 photos. Otherwise, it'll look very strange. But I have done that here. And then we move to a portrait orientation photo, which I don't typically like to take these days. I don't shoot for social media or anything like that. I just don't find that portrait orientation photos suit my eye particularly, except for pages like this. Because on pages like this, portrait photos, when they're full width, they force you to scroll. And in that act of scrolling, you as a photographer can build some suspense. So what is this photo? What is this photo? Don't know. Still don't know. What is that? Oh my word. Ugh. Not for me, jellyfish, to be honest. I might have said before, but I got stung by one of these when I was about 15. Something that looked quite a lot like that. And it basically felt like my blood pressure was being taken. And then all of a sudden, things got very painful. I was on steroids for a week. Anyway, that photo I think is a bit of fun and gives us license, feasibly, to move on to a fun fair. And the light is just... I love this time of year. If it looks like the sun's going to be out, this time of year, I make sure to get out. Because other than probably an hour or so in the middle of the day, the light is just incredible. And we don't get too many days like this here. But when it looks like we are going to, I clear everything that I can. Sometimes I can't, and then I sulk. And then another portrait shot where we have to scroll a lot. What is it? What is it? What is it? Naturally, it's a statue of a pink sheep on AstroTurf. This is on the roof of an ice cream shop. The next couple of photos are brought together by shadow, heavy shadows, so I think they work quite well together. Then a bit more of an expansive shot. Then a couple of mid shots of these garages, and I think the light works really well here. And I should say actually, when we're talking about detail shots and mid shots, the definitions for these words can be a little bit tricky. Certainly with regard to what I'm talking about, because, for example, a detail shot, when I talk about a detail shot, I'm thinking of like a close-up. But the reality, of course, is that you can get something that looks like a detail shot from half a mile away if you're shooting something big with a 600mm lens. You know, if you're shooting like a glacier front or something, then it's going to look like a detail shot, even though it's a long way off. Similarly, the word mid-shot, I think, can be a bit ambiguous as well. In filmmaking, for instance, the term mid-shot often means a shot that cuts off the person, the actor, whoever, at the waist. And that is not what I mean by a mid-shot. What I mean by a mid-shot is a shot that basically emphasises subject as opposed to scene. Now that in itself is pretty ambiguous, and obviously all this stuff is subjective. It sits on a sliding scale. But these, I would say, are examples of mid-shots. I'm not necessarily trying to show a big wide scene, I'm more trying to focus on showing the subject. Also, I should say, everything in this video was shot on this little 40mm f2.5 lens, one of my favourite lenses of all time. But yeah, I just used one focal length for these photos. And actually, that's a decent segue into today's sponsor, MPB. Now, as many of you know, I have been simplifying my kit quite a lot over the past year or so, and MPB has been hugely helpful in that quest. Basically, anytime I've got kit to sell, I go to MPB because I can get a quote online instantly, and if I'm happy with what MPB are offering me, then they'll arrange for a courier to come to my house to collect the kit, and then once they've received it and checked it, I'll be paid very quickly. I don't need to worry about taking photos of the kit, listing the kit, insuring the kit, disputes that might come up as a result of selling the kit, couriers, questions, fees. In my opinion, selling stuff is rarely fun. And MPB just takes away all the hassle. So if you've got stuff to sell, definitely check out MPB. Similarly, if you're in the market to buy a piece of kit, a camera or lens, for example, then definitely check out MPB first. You can save hundreds, if not thousands, by buying used. And on MPB, you can do so safe in the knowledge that everything has been checked by experts first, and everything comes with a warranty as well. So if this feels like the right time to make a change to your kit, then head to MPB. It's a fantastic service, I'd highly recommend it, and a big thank you to MPB for their continued support of this channel. Links in the description. Where were we? Yes, this garage shot. So the thing that inspires me to press my shutter in front of what looks like a detail shot is exactly the same as for the wider shots. Basically, I'm looking for scenes that have more questions than answers. And when I look at this garage, I think, well, is that a handprint? I don't know if that's a handprint. Who is Moe? And under the number 12, is that a smiley face? And those are questions that build curiosity in me and make me interested in the photos. And that's true of, as I say, detail shots and also the much wider shots. I bang on about photos having more questions than answers in basically every video if you're new around here, so sorry about that. Right, these next photos I was super excited about, but they don't really work as well as I hoped. Basically, this horse came along the beach and it was trotting up and down the beach, and I thought, oh, perfect. I can get sort of mirroring shots using the cedar fences. Sadly, by the time the horse had come back down the beach, the light had changed, the cloud had gone, and therefore the photos don't quite match up as well as I would have hoped. Certainly not in terms of the conditions, which is a bit of a shame, but I've stuck a detail shot of some rocks in between the two to hopefully make the differences in light a bit less obvious. Of course, the downside of that is that these photos are now tiny, so I'm not even sure you can really tell that it's a horse. I think you can just about, so I might get away with that one. Next up, a very sort of me photo, human nature, fairly expansive, lots of negative space. I like that. And then because of the expanse of this photo, I wanted to include some tighter shots next up, and these two from the boatyard I think work quite well for that. I really like these old tyres and the light on them. And as you might be able to see, I was shooting through a fence, and you can see the the fence shadows on the tyres, which adds another dynamic. And then back out to a bit more of an expansive shot where the light was getting really nice again. I should say that if you're shooting on a day like this and you're trying to compile a set of photos on a day like this, you are sort of penned in a little bit with the order of the photos, just because people know what light looks like throughout different times of the day. So you sort of do need to edit or curate in a bit more of a linear fashion than you'd be forced to if you were shooting on like an overcast day, for instance. Because on an overcast day, 10 a.m. would look much the same as 2 p.m. or whatever. Obviously that's not the case when the sun is moving around, and you can sort of tell what time of day it is. Anyway, then I followed that up with 4 photos, which were taken across a span of about 20 minutes. So the light is pretty much the same for all of them, but the distance between me and my subject gets closer and closer with each of them, if you read them left to right, up to down. So that's what ties those ones together. Then 3 detail shots, and what ties these together is the yellow. And those detail shots work brilliantly as a bridge to get me back to the beach. And yeah, I think we've probably got to the stage now where I've sufficiently, hopefully, explained the process. And yeah, throughout the course of this and throughout the course of shooting, I've not really been thinking about the different shot types. I've just been thinking about varying the distance to my subject. I quite like this one actually. This is very abstract. This is the steps on the pier, sort of just a straight down shot. And I didn't notice the bird feet. I suppose I could clone them out, but that's not photography, is it? Anyway, seaweed shots, fisherman shots. I really do like these actually. I mean, I talked in the last video about how I don't really like golden hour too much, and this is getting into golden hour, I would say. But yeah, these ones I do actually quite like. And then the light really kicked off. I'm unsure about the one on the left here. I don't know if that needs to be bigger, just because the seagull is dropping what I assume is like a mussel or something. It's trying to crack it. And I don't know if you can tell that when the photo is this small. I do really like this photo, the 2 women standing having a coffee and a chat. And I think the orange light on the steps really complements the blue in the sky. And I think them being framed by the mountains works quite well as well. And then there's a shot of the town that I've been walking around. This is a fairly sort of boring reflection shot, but I do like how the cloud detail sort of mirrors the seaweed in the bottom of the photo, so that's quite nice. Oh, I thought that was the last photo. It's not. There's a train crossing the bridge. I forgot about that one. What a way to arrive at a place in light like that, across a bridge like that. Oh, and there's another one I'd forgotten about. A letterbox of some silhouettes at what is quite clearly the end of the light, and therefore the end of the story. Which I think makes sense, even though I'd, as I say, forgotten it existed. Anyway, hopefully that was interesting or useful. And yeah, the 3-shot rule. I don't often employ it, but I do try and practice it from time to time, because it can be useful for getting practice at varying the distance between you and your subject. And doing that means you end up with a body of images that can work quite well for a page like that, or a book, as I say, or a social media post, or whatever, really. So yes, that's hopefully the message of this video. Also, as you might have noticed, I had a camera strap on in this video. I was talking in literally the last video about the joys I had found of not using a camera strap. Thing is, last week I was out on the beach and...
Smooth, James. Very smooth.
Camera was fine. To be honest, I wish I could tell you that was the end of the story.
Just done it again.
I promise you that's not a joke. I fell over twice in the space of about 25 seconds. Again, no damage, but it did make me think, is this no strap thing a good idea? The other thing I noticed, it was bitterly cold that day I was out, and in winter, having to hold your camera means your hands are out of your pockets. And putting gloves on and holding a camera without a strap is also not the most secure feeling thing. So perhaps I'll revisit the no strap thing next spring, which is a shame. I was just getting into it. But yeah, clearly I can't be trusted. Anyway, I'm waffling. Big thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Cheers.